their director.
Sure. I think the job that you want to interview me about is artistic director.
Artistic director.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Sounds great. So we're gonna go with that. Okay, I don't know what's with the camera, but oh no, it's good. It was very, very wide, but right now I'm gonna make it a little bit closer. Okay, so let me. I want to be closer to
Sure.
the camera so we can.
Do you want me to?
Go through the, yeah, that would
Here?
be great if you're comfortable here. Awesome. You're ready?
Yep.
Cool. Okay. Beautiful. Say what is your profession and how would you describe your profession to a high school student who never heard about it, who doesn't know what is that exactly?
Hi, my name is Tal Aviazer. I'm the artistic director of Red Monkey Theater Group, which is the resident theater company at the College of Mount St. Vincent in those productions, which would include the directors, the designers, the actors, in some cases the playwrights, if it's a new play that's being written for your theater company to do. And so you have to understand how all of those different artistic elements, which is all of the shows you might do in a given year, and then we're doing it again at the moment. So I've been doing it for 20 years.
Wow, that's impressive. How did you choose your profession and how did you come to this point?
Lucky enough to be exposed to theater when I was just about your age. I think that the first play that I was ever in was when I was in 7th grade, so maybe 12 years old. And I think I enjoyed it. I think I was drawn to it at first because I was instinctively good at it and people praised me for it. I know that's not a great answer, but sometimes it's nice to be told that you're doing a good job at something and people appreciate it. It didn't occur to me to pursue it professionally until years later. But I think the reason it most resonated with me is it allows you to explore many different forms of art. You have to be a little bit of a writer, a little bit of an actor. You have to have a little bit of a visual artistic sensibility. You have to know something about music, something about sound, something about lighting. And it's not a solitary artistic profession. And I really like to collaborate and work with other people as part of a team or a group. And it's very rewarding for me to see what different people have to contribute artistically towards the same goal. So it allowed me to work in the arts, but not in isolation, as some other artists in their media are more obliged to do.
Amazing. Do you mind technical break for a second? There's no way, or wait, there is a way, right, to close the file?
Yeah.
It's a little bit too much light from this side. Do I just adjust it?
Just pull one side. There you go.
This is amazing. How much detail you describe everything and like keep the picture and overview. Okay.
Is it that one?
It was this side, yeah, because it's all mirrored.
Yeah.
This is great.
Do you want to do that take again?
It's actually fine.
Okay.
Yeah, it was just a little bit too much light, but I don't think it's fine. Nice. Should be amazing. Okay, what is this chair? Is it this one? There's a chair behind you. I think it's this one.
Might be this.
Oh yeah, it's the one. Hmm. Hmm. Okay, here we go. Awesome. What was so you told us about the first experience that you
Sure.
had with the theater. Was there anything prior to that that helped you make the decision that you want to be part of the theater and that you want to do acting?
Um, I don't think, I think I understood what acting was and what theater was in a very general, broad way before I did my first play, which was a school play, like they probably have it at your school, and which some of you have probably participated in. Um, but it didn't occur to me that it was possible to do that as a profession. I'd never thought about it in a really concrete and detailed way before I had the opportunity to do it myself. And I thought throughout, most of my school career, throughout middle school and high school, I really thought that I would be a writer, like a novelist, like I was going to write the great American novel. And I was very sure about that. It really didn't occur to me that I would go on to be doing theater professionally. So it wasn't until I think quite late in my college career when I fully appreciated how much more I enjoyed theater, uh, and how much more likely I was to be able to work in theater for the rest of my life, and how I was not necessarily as likely to write the great American novel, and make my living and pursue my career that way. So I think it was a gradual process, and I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to explore different things and see if I had an aptitude for them, and experiment and find out what my strengths were and what I enjoyed. And I think that's probably why it's important to be open to new experiences, to try out things that you've never been exposed to before, because the thing you're offered might end up being something that you would really like to do for the rest of your life, and you'll never know if you don't take advantage of that. As a young person that sort of has the ability to, oh, I'll spend a couple of months doing this and see what I think about it. So you should try new things.
Awesome. Can you name 5 specific responsibilities for your occupation?
Sorry, 5 specific
Responsibilities.
responsibilities?
Mm-hmm.
5 specific responsibilities for an artistic director. You have to understand style, and by style I mean the style of plays. So, for instance, a Shakespeare play is not the same sort of piece as, say, Avengers Endgame, right? That's a different style of acting that you would do if you're doing Hamlet, as opposed to doing Fast and the Furious. So when you're given a script or when you read a script, you have to appreciate, oh, this is Elizabethan theater, or this is French existentialism, or this is modern soap opera. And what are the demands and expectations and skills of the particular piece you're working on, and how can you best support that? Um, some styles are harder to work in than others. Opera, really, really hard. Some other styles might be a little easier, but it might take a different skill set and a different sensibility to do a production of West Side Story, or to do a production of Endgame or some Sartre play. Um, what are other responsibilities that you have? You have to be able to communicate with people. You're talking with people all the time, and you have to be patient with them, and you have to treat them respectfully, and you have to know enough about their job to be able to speak to them on their terms. So I may not be a lighting designer, but I need to know enough about lighting design that I can explain to a lighting designer the effect that needs to be achieved in a particular scene or production. I'm not a painter or a scenic designer, but I need to be familiar enough with the job and the language used by scenic to describe what set I need created for a particular show. What else is required to do this job? You have to be a good judge of talent. Um, when you are going to be in a play as an actor, you go to an audition and you're competing against a lot of other actors who are trying to get the same role. And as a director or an artistic director, you're in a position of having to select the right person for the right job. And you're looking for not only talent, but also if they're professional and reliable and responsible, and also if they seem like the sort of person that you'd like to spend time working very closely with for weeks or months or maybe even years. There's a writer called Neil Gaiman, and he talks about the 3 qualities that you look for in somebody that you want to work with. And the first is talent. And the second is, are they responsible? Can they meet a deadline? Can they show up at the place they're supposed to be at the time they're supposed to be there? And the third thing is, do you like them? Like, are they easy to get along with? And the truth is, you need to have 2 out of 3. Like 2 out of 3 of those things is fine. Well, you can be, if you're really talented and you're not that reliable, it's probably okay as long as it's always a pleasure to hear from you. But you should strive to have all 3 of those qualities. But if you want to succeed professionally, I think in just about anything, you have to have at least 2 out of 3. So be talented and nice, or be reliable and talented, or be reliable and nice. Another quality that you need to succeed as an artistic director, it requires endurance. You have to be determined. Things will always go wrong. There is an expression about theater that some of you guys probably know, which is the show must go on. And the reason that expression came about is because something is always breaking, something is always going wrong, and you have to carry on under adverse conditions. Everything is a struggle sometimes, or sometimes it feels like everything is a struggle, and you have to be calm and collected and comfortable in what seems like a storm that's happening all around you, because the other people involved in the theater will look to you to see how they should feel. And if you let them know that things are going to be okay, then things are going to be okay. But you have to sort of be a steady presence for the other artists that you're working with. What else do you need to be an artistic director? You have to be passionate about performing, and you have to be passionate about theater, and you have to feel that there's a value to the world in doing this kind of art, in performing and presenting theater and sharing theater with people, because sometimes you might not make a lot of money doing it. So you have to, there are a lot of jobs that people do that are not necessarily jobs that you're going to get rich. Some artistic directors do get rich. Like if you work for a really big theater, you might do okay. But most artistic directors are not wealthy. So you have to really love what you're doing. And that has to be its own reward. And I would say the same thing is true about many other professions, such as being a teacher. It's not necessarily the most lucrative thing in the world to do. So it's a job that is rewarding for that person because they're helping you. And that's an important thing to keep in mind. It's something you should go into because you're passionate about it and because you love it, not necessarily because you love the material things that it could bring you, because it might not bring them.
Wow. You gave a lot of Can you describe your average day? Like what is on a typical day?
Okay, so can I describe the average day of an artistic director? Here's the thing about the average day of an artistic director. This job is different every day. And that's kind of one of the most attractive and fun things about it. So some days you might spend the whole day writing a play. You might be writing a script, or you might be editing a script, or you might be taking a short story that somebody else wrote and turning that into a script. So you might be doing a lot of writing. Some days you might not be doing any writing at all. You might be in rehearsal for 6 hours or 8 hours, working with a whole team of actors and a stage manager, helping to shape their performances, helping them know how to move around the stage, how to change the set, what the play means, what the text means, what the word means, so that they can communicate that to the audience. Other times you might be meeting with designers to talk about concepts. They might be showing you a little model of a set that they made. You might be talking about changes with them. Other times you might be preparing for an upcoming season. So you might be reading a whole bunch of scripts and thinking, which play should we do? And then there's a lot of practical work that goes into that. So if you've chosen a play that you'd like to do, you have to maybe see if the rights are available to perform that play, right? Because the author is going to get royalties and somebody else might have reserved that play. And so you might not get to do the one you want because somebody else is doing it. So what's your backup option going to be? You might be meeting with donors, because that's how it works in theater. Sometimes you need people to be patrons and to support the theater and to make donations. So you might be going to dinner with some people to talk about why they love theater and why they should support your particular theater company. You might be doing interviews with the press. You might be doing a little television interview or radio interview, or talking to a newspaper about the show that you're doing, why people should come see it. It's also possible, a lot of artistic directors, I do this, at least once or twice a season, they actually act in the show. So you might be learning your lines, or you might be performing. You might have a performance that day. So one of the best things about this job is there's a lot of variety. And there are even more things than the things I just listed. And when I start listing all of them like that, it seems really overwhelming. But you should look at that as a plus. If there's always something new and there's always a new skill to be learned. It's never boring because it's not routine. But you also have to have the flexibility to know I could be doing something really different tomorrow than I'm doing today.
Awesome. Can you share a little bit more about the plays that you chose to direct and why you chose them specifically?
Sure. In terms of the plays that I've chosen to direct and why specifically I've chosen them, I think that there are times when you pick a play because you feel that the story that the play is communicating is one that's very important for people to hear right now. Maybe if they hear this story, it might help them with something difficult that they're going through, or it might help them to make a better choice about how to behave towards other people, or some wisdom about how they should proceed with their lives, or it might reassure them, or it might challenge them and make them think, here's something that I thought was true, but maybe it's not true. Maybe I should think twice about it. So I think you think and feel. And if you read a play and think, I see myself in that play, that's something that I've always wondered about, or I've always felt to be true, but I didn't realize it was possible for somebody to put that in words. It's really shocking to me that somebody has articulated this feeling, which I thought couldn't be expressed in words, and they've taken it and crystallized it into a script. That's probably the play to choose. Particularly when earlier in my career, I was really obsessed with Shakespeare, and I thought I want to act in or direct every play that Shakespeare has written, and there are a lot of them. I think there are 36, and I've probably done, 16 or 18. But the sort of play that you are really interested in when you're 24 or 25, when you're in your 30s or your 40s, maybe you don't feel the same way about that play, or maybe you do still like it, but you like it in a completely different way. So part of the job is to always be seeing plays, always be looking at different people's work and experiencing other people's art and letting that influence you and show you new things so you don't get stuck in a rut artistically.
Awesome. What is important to learn to become an artistic director? Like, do you need to have an education? What kind of education?
To become an artistic director, it needs you need training and you need experience. So if this is something that you're interested in doing, I would absolutely think about going to school for theater There are a lot of good conservatory programs that you can go to when you're older. I went to one called the National Theater Institute, which is in Connecticut. But if you're in school in New York, there's lots of very good theater schools in New York. But you usually wouldn't come right out of school to be an artistic director of a theater. You would go to school for theater and you would study acting and directing, probably some dance, and probably lots of the other things that go into theater, like stage management and design, those capacities. So you learn practically how to do those jobs. So after the training and after you've had some practical experience, that might be the right time to become an artistic director. Particularly, you might do them if you feel like, I've got a project that I really want to do. I've got a show that I have created or that I would really like to do, and there doesn't seem to be another theater company that's about to do it or interested in doing it, so maybe I ought to do it myself. Sometimes you end up accidentally becoming an artistic director that way because you're just really passionate about your project. Theater requires you to know a lot of different disciplines, to study a lot of different things. So if you're interested in theater, you should go to museums and look at paintings, look at art, study dance, read a lot of books, go to plays, watch movies, see a lot of other people performing. There's very little in life that is not relevant to theater because theater is the study of life. Almost any information you collect will be valuable to you in theater at some point, even if it's journalism, even if it's science, if it's studying a foreign language, there will be a play when somebody wants you to speak a foreign language. It's a nice thing about theater is many of the experiences and things that you can learn about are relevant to it, and it requires a broad, holistic education, but particularly eat as much art as you can. Enjoy as much art as you can.
How did you decide to become an artistic director? Was it like when you graduated from school, you realized you want to become one, or you started with acting and then you slowly developed it?
How did I decide to become an artistic director? I went to school for theater. I graduated and I started getting some paying gigs in theater, mostly in summer stock theater, which is theater that's produced in the summer, often at very nice outdoor locations. I was doing a lot of Shakespeare plays, and I did that for a couple of years. I got to do all sorts of different plays. Some were really good, some were not good. It's important to get a variety of experience. And after doing that for a couple of years, myself and a few friends that I had been to conservatory with decided that we wanted to produce a play. We wanted to put on our own play, and we felt that we had the skill and experience to do it. And we were just thinking in terms of putting on that production. It was a Shakespeare play called Cymbeline. We weren't necessarily thinking about, we are a theater company now. We just thought we really want to do this play. So we sort of put the play first, but we learned through doing it that you need a theater company to produce plays, which probably seems really obvious, but our approach was maybe a little bit backwards. We had the project first and then built a company around that project. And I hadn't actually done a lot of, I directed a few things in school prior to doing that, but that was the first production that I ever directed outside of school. And I learned through doing that I was pretty good at it and I liked it. I found it very rewarding to be creating something like that for people. So it was sort of something I chose, but also something that sort of happened to me. But I think it happened to me because I was passionate about pursuing a particular piece. And I was open to the opportunities that developed.
So you started directing right away, almost right after graduating. It wasn't like you were an actor for a long time.
I was an actor maybe for like 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. You already covered about knowledge that you need to have to become an artistic director. What are the habits that you feel like are important for an artistic director to be successful?
Okay. The habits that I feel are important for an artistic director to be successful. Keep exposing yourself to art. Look at new art that's being created. Look at classic art that's been around for hundreds of years. Always be taking art in and letting it affect you. Listen. Listen to the other artists that you're collaborating with. If you're directing something, you've probably got 6, 12, 18, 50 other brains collaborating with you on that project. And you do yourself a disservice if you only listen to this brain. Listen to the artistic input of everybody in the company. You don't need to follow everything that they say, but you're cheating yourself if you don't at least listen and entertain other people's ideas. I'd say those are probably the two most important parts of the job. Theater can be really tough. It's a hard profession to be involved in. If you go to audition as an actor, I'd say better than 9 times out of 10, you're not going to get it. You're not going to get the part, and that's just the reality of it. And you have to not internalize rejection. You can't take that rejection too personally. You cannot get a part because of factors that have nothing to do with you or what you can control. You just have to continue to persevere and look for the next opportunity. It can be a little discouraging, but it's important to keep in mind that just because a particular job didn't work out, a particular part didn't work out, a particular opportunity fell through, it's not because you were bad. That's not it at all. And you just have to continue to endure and pursue the next available opportunity to do what you want to do.
I wish everyone could hear that as early as possible. What are the technical skills?
The technical skills involved in being an artistic director, there are many technical skills involved in being an artistic director. As I mentioned previously, the artistic director doesn't need to be a lighting designer, but they need to know enough about lighting design that they can intelligently communicate with a lighting designer, which requires a certain amount of technical skill. You don't have to be a great musician or a composer. You have to know something about music because music evokes emotion. You have to know, the more you know about how sound can be used to create feeling, how it can be technically manipulated, how light can be technically manipulated. And that's a combination of art and science. There is a lot of science that goes into design and composition. It can at times be very technical and mechanical. And you have to reconcile yourself to the fact that not all of the business of creating art is emotional and poetic and lyrical and touchy and feely. Some of it is very practical and very technical and specific and real world and concrete. And to produce a strong artistic effect, you have to have a certain amount of technical knowledge, special effects, lighting and sound design, building a set. There's a certain amount of architectural knowledge that goes into that, knowledge of building materials, what's safe and not safe, right? You don't want anybody to get hurt. Choreography, whether you're choreographing a dance or a fight scene or a love scene, that has to be really specific and precise movements that everybody involved in that scene is comfortable with and knows what's coming and when it's coming, because there could be physical danger if you haven't given very specific technical attention to how those moments are going to be executed on stage. So I would say do be prepared to buckle down and reconcile yourself to that there's a certain amount of science and technical aptitude that is required by this job, even if you consider yourself, oh, I'm an artistic person, I'm not a technical person. A good artistic director will be capable of using both sides of the brain to tell the story. So one or the other may be easier for you, but it really does pay to cultivate both of those aspects.
And what are some most important personal qualities? You mentioned some of them already, but if you can summarize.
Sure. Personal qualities for an artistic director: patience, empathy, meaning recognize other people's humanity. I think if you don't have empathy, you probably can't be a very good artist. I mean, I think that art is about empathy. When you're an artistic director, you're responsible for empathy, creating empathy between the audience and the art, but also between the artists who are working to create the piece. Respect for other people's humanity. You have to be a manager. Running a theater is running a small business, and you have to make, many of the same sort of practical nuts and bolts cost benefit decisions that you would make if you were running if you were running a hardware store or a pizza parlor. Certain people work for you. Certain supplies, certain inventory has to be in when it's got to be in. Sets have to be built on time. People have to be hired, and contracts, policies have to be developed. So a lot of it's actually, even if you don't ultimately end up in theater, if you or work for a theater for a short time, you would actually learn skills that are applicable to small business: meeting a deadline, communicating with people, managing a budget. You have to do all that stuff. And that's useful to know for a lot more than theater, both in your personal and professional lives: responsibility, dedication, communication, and basic management skills. Absolutely.
Awesome. Let's imagine I'm a high school student. What are some job titles for the entry-level positions for this?
Okay, if you're a high school student who's looking to work in theater, many theaters offer internship opportunities for a high school student. Most of the actors and production staff that we have working with Red Monkey Theater Group have done internships. We have an internship program, and those interns have often gone on to be hired as production crew or stage managers. That's often a path into theater. There's no harm in going and auditioning. You really lose nothing by it, and it can be a valuable learning experience just to audition. There's a chance that somebody needs a teenager to be in their play, and then you will really get some hands-on performance experience. But theaters always need. You definitely have a skill that they need. Any carpentry skill, they need you. If you can design a program, they need you. If you can do social media marketing, they need you. If you can take photographs, they need you. If you can help someone else learn lines, there will be something for you to do at a theater that is probably within 10 blocks of where you're sitting right now. And they will be happy to have you help. It's a tough profession to make a living in. It takes a lot of perseverance to make enough money to live in theater. But just to get a foot in the door, to be involved in some way, not difficult at all. They need people. They always need people. I would say that the most important thing is just to be present and make yourself available, and to show that you're enthusiastic about doing it. And a good theater will find a place for you. But I would also say your time is valuable. And if you don't feel like people at a particular theater are valuing your time, treating you respectfully, even if you're just an intern or just somebody who's helping out, you should feel like you're being treated decently and welcomed and respected and being given some kind of benefit from being there. If you don't feel like they're honoring your presence and your commitment, there's another theater that'll treat you better than that. I think it's an unfortunate dynamic in theater that people think all of the power is on the artistic director side or the managing director side or the side of management. Actors and other people working in theater deserve respect, and you should insist on that. Don't allow yourself to be taken advantage of in a professional situation that goes for more than theater in any professional situation. And I know it seems like you've got your whole life ahead of you, but it goes fast. And your time is important. Don't give somebody 6 or 8 weeks of your time if you don't feel like they deserve it. If you don't feel valued, you find a better way to spend your time.
I love how you inject wisdom in all of your answers.
Well, it's funny. I don't speak to kids a lot, and it's you realize the importance of it, and the stuff that you wish people had said.
Yeah, and the stuff that you went through and experienced.
Yeah.
Like from that side of the journey. How it is. Well,
I also realize how old you must seem. Yeah.
I don't feel like you're old. I feel like there's a lot of amazing experience that you can share. How can I grow from like the entry-level position to an artistic director?
How can you grow from your entry-level position to get to be an artistic director? So theater is not like it's not like being a lawyer or a doctor or even a teacher where there's a certain logical career path that you can try to adhere to get from point A to point B. So I would say the only really piece of solid advice I can give you to progress in theater is to always be working. Take all kinds of different jobs. If there isn't a job, make your own job. If you do not wait to be discovered. Networking, working through people that you know, people that you like to work with, creating projects with them, I think is a much better way to advance in theater than just going to open auditions and hoping that somebody discovers you and hoping that they're good, and knowing how to use you properly. Create your own art. I'd say that's probably the best way to succeed. But above all, just keep working. And if you feel like you identify a group that they're producing good work, that is a group that I would really like to be a part of. Find a way to associate yourself with them, even if it's not ultimately, even if it will, like, you really want to be an actor and they need people to build set. Go and work on set with them. They'll see your face. You'll get to meet them. You'll have the opportunity to form relationships with them, and you will put yourself on their radar. I think that's the best advice that I could give. It's difficult to give constructive advice about art, except to keep creating it, keep working. I mean, the only way to really fail is if you just stop doing it completely. If you say I can't write, or I can't paint, or I can't act, that is when you cease to be an artist. As long as you are creating art, as long as you're working in some way, you are an artist. And yes, perseverance, and also the same things that would get you hired in any job. Be responsible. If somebody needs you to be at a certain place at a certain time, be there. Don't be a jerk. Be nice to your coworkers, just like you would in any professional environment. Treat people well, treat people respectfully. It will be noticed. But those things are important. Those things are just as important, if not more important, than talent. Just be a professional and be a respectful, compassionate, decent human being. It sounds easy. It's not. And it sounds commonplace, but it's rare. Just keep working.
I want to make sure we're good in time because it's 7:30 now.
Yeah, I'm fine. I don't have anything this evening.
Okay, we have a couple more parts of questions. If you want to take the breaks at any moment, just tell me.
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Good. Okay. What is the next growth step for you personally, and how you're planning to get there?
Yeah. So I tend to think. So Red Monkey Theater Group is it's my theater that I founded it. I founded it 20 years ago, which seems super long when I'm talking to middle school students. And I tend to think in 5-year plans. So we got our current residency at this college started in 2012. And my goal, my 5-year goal when we started the residency was every artist and staff member who's working on shows for us has to get paid something. I didn't necessarily, not necessarily enough that could be their full-time job, but I didn't want people to feel like their time, wasn't valued enough that they should receive some sort of salary or stipend that they could begin to work towards a full-time career in the arts. And we actually did get there within 4 years, not within 5. So that's good. That we're able to, everybody who works with our theater at least gets paid something, whether you are a lighting operator or a stagehand or an actor or a director. And then the next 5-year goal, which we're a couple of years into now, we haven't hit the 5-year mark yet, is I would like this theater to support more people as a full-time job than it currently does, to provide a living for more of our staff. Right now, it's a part-time job for almost everybody. Theater is a little bit different because some people just come in and work essentially like a freelancer on a particular show, and then they move on and they go and they work someplace else. There are some actors you develop a relationship with, the designers, directors, and they work with you multiple shows. And then there are some people who, artistic director, managing director, production designer, they're like always here. And that's like your core staff. So you want to make sure all of those people feel valued and all of those people are able to pay their rent and, buy groceries. So that's the next goal, I'd say, for to be able to provide like a better life financially for those people. I think the art will take care of itself. I'm very proud of what we're doing artistically, and the ambition, the growth, what we're able to, level of productions that we're able to produce. I think in 2012, I think we did 18 performances the whole year, and I think this year it's 80 something. I don't even know anymore. It's getting to be like more nights of the year we are performing, not just in rehearsal. We've got shows going on all the time and often multiple shows. So you want to make sure that the artistic content is improving and that also people get to make a living doing that. That's the 5-year goal.
Is there different directions that you can take? Like, for example, you can work with small theaters, big theaters.
Yes. So artistic director covers a lot of ground. There's a huge range of theater sizes. You can be the artistic director of Red Monkey Theater Group, which is a pretty small theater company. We do have our own theater. Not all theater companies have that. We do some different venues, but you can also be the artistic director of Lincoln Center, which is like a really huge nonprofit theater. And those are both artistic directors, but the scale of the work that's being done and the artistic content that those two people are responsible for in terms of budget, in terms of the number of people working on it, the size of the venues, the scope of what they're doing, that covers a huge range. Like, there's a baseball player that might play for like the Cape Cod Summer League, and then there's a baseball player that might play for the Yankees. And those people are both baseball players that still like fundamentally the same job, but the scale of what they're doing is wide ranging. So opera companies, and the Metropolitan Opera has an artistic director. The Theater for a New Audience has an artistic director. The Public Theater, where they do Shakespeare in the Park every summer, they have an artistic director. And there are different theaters all over the country, New York, LA, Chicago, and everywhere. Every city has at least one really good theater that has an artistic director. Alabama Shakespeare Festival, Long Wharf Theater, and sometimes, or different countries, and sometimes you might move. You might be an artistic director someplace for 3 years or 5 years, and then you might go to a different theater, and they each have their different idiosyncrasies and different rules, different funding, and different types of art that they like to produce. So it's for that reason. It's hard to say an artistic director is always this, but I think that some of the stuff that I've talked about earlier in this interview, that's pretty consistent for an artistic director, no matter what scale you're operating on. Whether you have a real small theater like mine, or whether you have a huge theater like Lincoln Center, there are certain fundamentals. There are many details that are different.
Amazing. And now we come to the questions about the salary. So how is your pay correlated with your performance? I don't know if you have like a fixed salary.
How does my pay correlate with my performance? So that's interesting because there are lots of different ways you get paid in the theater. Somebody who's on management staff, like an artistic director or managing director, they have a salary. I think the average salary for an artistic director is about something like $50,000 a year, to give you an idea of how much money you're talking about. But an actor or a designer probably has a contract just for the particular show that they're working on. And sometimes you actually would get paid per performance. So the actors and actually the stage manager that we work with on our plays, they have a per performance fee. So if the show gets more performances and runs longer, they will then make more money because they're doing more performances. But a designer might just have a flat fee. You design the lights for this particular show. This is going to be your fee for designing those lights, whether the show closes after 2 weeks or whether it runs for 2 years. You've been paid your agreed upon contracted amount. So the pay in theater can vary a lot from project to project and from job to job, depending on what your role is in the company. But for an artistic director, and again, you're talking about a huge range of scale, the average salary, which covers a lot of ground, is about $50,000 a year, which is not that much. But you might also, if you're an artistic director like me, maybe you're also writing plays, so you might be getting some royalties from plays that you wrote being done. You get paid, when a play that you're acting in some of your plays, so you might also be drawing some of those per performance fees. You might get another salary for directing a particular play, which is different from the salary you're getting for artistic directing the entire theater company. So the specific work that you're doing that season.
Well, you're also writing the...
Yeah, like the Sherlock Holmes adaptations that I told you about.
I saw the article that was saying that you changed, not changed, right, but you performed it in a different way, or...
Yeah. So
it was
the Sherlock Holmes ones, it's a short story, right? It exists as a short story, which is in the public domain because it's 1890, whenever he wrote it. So if I take that short story and make it into a script, I now own that adaptation of the story. So that's a play I wrote, and other theater companies might do plays that I write.
So they buy it from you and they use it in the theater.
And it's like anytime that you have to license a script, and there's usually a certain fee every time it's performed, the author gets something. And it's usually not very much. It's usually like $30 to $60 per performance. Sometimes for a musical, it might be more, 120, 180. But that's good. If somebody's doing your play for 6 months, somebody did one of my Sherlock Holmes plays in Norway. I didn't even get to see it, but but it's fun. I mean, I just sit here and I get royalties. I hope it was good,
That's nice. How did they find you? And they just
So it was
looked it up?
because of people are obsessed with Sherlock Holmes,
Okay.
and they'll track you
Was
down.
it after the TV show that came
Yeah,
out?
yeah. But even if that show hadn't happened, there's always some Sherlock Holmes thing happening, right? People are always love it, and it's always being reinvented and changed.
Yeah.
So yeah, people, particularly with Holmes, or even the seagull. I guess technically that's my script, right? I mean, it's Chekhov, and then I found a public domain translation by a lady called Constance Garnett from, I think, 1911. So it was like one of the first English translations, but she wrote it to be performed by Edwardian English actors, and it's absolutely formal English, and everything sounds like this, and it's meant to be
more British.
It's
English?
completely British. So it doesn't sound natural at all delivered by an American actor, right? It's because it's not only British, it's 1911, right? So a drawing room, British. And I've been told actually by Russians, it shouldn't be like that. Like they find the British, it's too formal or too stiff or too dry. It should be looser. It should be more relaxed. I don't know because I can't read it in Russian. So the seagull that you saw was like a really American seagull. And the language, I think, was quite modern. You know, I wanted to sort of make it a little bit timeless.
Yeah.
So the idiom that they're speaking in is like a modern American, as opposed to Edwardian English, as opposed to 1899
So you
Russian.
translated it from that British
Yes,
English
I took the
to
public
American?
domain British English version and then rewrote it, but I don't have access to the Russian, right? Because I can't read Russian.
Yeah.
So I'm rewriting a translation.
Wow.
And hoping that it has some fidelity to the Russian.
Yeah.
But Shakespeare too, some of the, most Shakespeare plays uncut can be anywhere from 3 to 4 hours long. Sometimes we did a Hamlet that was 95 minutes. So the cut becomes your cut, right? It's like your edit of this play. And then you can license that out if you want to. So once you start creating, there's usually an afterlife, for some of the work. So you can make some money that way if other people like it enough to do it. And we've gotten a couple of cool opportunities. I think I mentioned Neil Gaiman earlier. I don't know if you know him. He's a British science fiction writer. He wrote American Gods, the show I think it's on Showtime right now, or HBO. Coraline, it's a weird puppet movie. He's like this super popular, like, science fiction fantasy writer guy. He also wrote comic books. And we somehow got the rights to do Neverwhere, which was a play based on a novel that he wrote. And I don't know why we were given the rights to do it, but we were the first company in New York to do it. So because of that, we went from like nobody ever heard of to like that place was, I was turning hundreds of people away, because people were just crazy about this Neil Gaiman play that we somehow got to be the first company in New York to do. And they only gave us licensing. We were only allowed to do 16 performances. Like,
so
they limited me. Yeah, I could have run that for 4 years, right? People would have kept coming, but like they have a strategy. Like, I'm sure they're looking for.
Can you extend it somehow, or
I think they're looking for. They want like a big Broadway or off-Broadway production for that.
So you think they're planning it now, and because of that,
Yeah. So they don't want like a long-running small theater in New York to be doing this before it's had some sort of really glamorous. Yeah. But I was happy to get to do it at all. It was super cool.
That was actually our next question in the interview. How can you monetize your skills, like outside of being artistic director, like, for example, teaching master classes?
Yeah. How can you monetize your skills outside of being an artistic director? You can teach acting, you can teach playwriting, you can teach directing, and you can teach the skills that are needed to do those things. So you can teach public speaking. Even if somebody is not necessarily an actor, some of the skills that an actor needs might benefit them if they're working for a corporation, if they need to give a presentation, if they just need to become more comfortable speaking properly and publicly. Some people just, like to learn about theater recreationally because they have an interest in it, or because they have an academic interest in it. You might be an artistic director who knows a lot about Shakespeare because you've been a dramaturge Shakespeare. You can probably teach a class on Shakespeare somewhere, or on different playwrights whose work you might be familiar with. I personally get work as a voiceover actor or a voice actor. So I've done a bunch of radio work, and I've done some voice work for video games and for some cartoons and things like that. And that's sort of ancillary work for me, but obviously some of the skills that you have to develop for performing on stage can translate pretty readily to doing work like that. And it's usually not a huge time commitment to do a radio spot. You can you get some work as an editor, as a writer. I've supported myself by freelance writing for my entire career, done all kinds of writing. I've written scientific journalism. I've written for nonprofit companies. I've done some criticism. I've done some summaries of scripts for the companies that license scripts for performance. They might provide you with, here's what this play's about. So I've written up like a one-page summary of what plays and musicals are about. All sorts of things, helping kids with their college essays. I've done some essay work, some tutoring. The nice thing about it is you're going to learn a pretty wide range of skills that are going to be applicable somewhere. But I found for me particularly, there's always been a call for the writing skills that serve me as an artistic director, and the teaching skills, the communication skills. You can teach privately. I've been an adjunct professor at a college, teaching some theater that way. And odds are like you're going to need some of that stuff, to supplement your income and make a living. So it is good to develop those skills. Some other artistic directors, like if you've got a lot of design skill, there are people that do carpentry, that do painting, that do some architecture work or some interior design work, and do quite well doing that. Sound production, sound mixing, editing, sometimes some video editing. I know some people who do that. I don't do that personally. But odds are, if you've got the skills to do this job, you've got some skills that you can apply to lots of other kinds of work as well.
Awesome. And can you share more about that story, about the play that you've written that was performed in Norway?
Oh, yeah. So one of the things that I sort of lucked into was adapting Sherlock Holmes short stories. These are Victorian English stories by a writer called Arthur Conan Doyle. I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard of Sherlock Holmes. So there's these short detective stories that I've adapted into scripts, into short plays, and my theater companies produced companies. There was a production of one of my plays once recently in Norway, which I wasn't able to see, but you can get some royalties on scripts that you've written. If they have a life beyond the production that you use them in, you can make them available to other theater companies, and they can make their own productions using them, which is really great. To think that something you wrote might be produced on the other side of the world. You might not get to see the production yourself, but it's very cool, very humbling to know that other people are enjoying it somewhere. In some cases, even translating your stuff into their language, and adapting your work in the way that you've adapted others' work, and that it has an ability to reach people beyond even the audience that you first intended it for. So that's another not necessarily foreseen avenue, but you absolutely can support yourself in some ways doing that as well.
I can really go on because you have such an interesting story and experience. But I value your time, so a couple more questions.
Sure.
We're going to be done. Can you list 3 positive aspects of your job and why you love it personally? Maybe 3 main reasons.
Sure. 3 positive aspects of my job. The variety. It's not routine. The challenge is always new. The rewards are always new. and you never stop learning, and you're continually confronted with how much you don't know, which I find to be very exciting. I enjoy not knowing, and I enjoy having my assumptions challenged. And being an artistic director will continually challenge your assumptions about the world, about life, and about other people. So that's very rewarding. It's it's given me the opportunity to work with lots of really wonderful artists, and it's difficult for me to convey that in a way that doesn't seem trite, but the diversity in terms of background, in terms of age, in terms of race, in terms of experience, in terms of lifestyle, all the different kind of people and the different perspectives that come in and out of your life doing theater, it's profound, and you get to really share things with people and open up with people, I think, in a way that our society does not usually give you permission to do, because sometimes for very good reasons, our society kind of encourages you to protect yourself, not be that vulnerable, not share that much, not express that much, not risk that much, because you could be embarrassed or taken advantage of in some way. And theater is really liberating in that in order to succeed at it, you sort of have to let go of that fear. And you get to know people very closely and very quickly. And you get to be able to trust and rely on people in a way that sometimes in life there aren't easy pathways to get to do. You make a lot of really wonderful friends, and you get some honesty from people that you might not otherwise in a normal profession you might not see. What else is irreplaceable about it? It gives you permission to play, and I don't mean play like play sports. I mean like play, imaginative play like children do, to make stuff up and to feel and to believe in a way that I think, again, sadly, a lot of people, once they hit adulthood, their opportunity to enjoy that is minimized, or they don't have as many opportunities to play in the way that kids do. Theater gives you permission to sort of keep that part of your brain active and engaged, and to continue to create and imagine in the way that children do all the time. And in some ways, children do better than anyone. But theater gives you permission to continue to play in that way that I think you might really enjoy as a child, and continue this sort of life, the imaginative life, creative life that you had as a kid. It's a way to do that your whole life.
And what is the most difficult in your job?
What is the most difficult? Most difficult aspects of theater are, there are times when everything goes wrong at once. And, sometimes in really like frustrating, banal ways that like you don't think when you go to see a show, from an audience's perspective, things might seem glamorous or even magical, but like somewhere backstage in that theater, the toilet is overflowing. I promise you it is. Like, I promise you the toilet is backed up and the artistic director is back there with a plunger, like trying to fix it. There's, stuff falls apart, the prop breaks, a mask won't fit on somebody's face, somebody gets sick, somebody gets hurt. You are doing a play and the performance rights get pulled at the last minute and you have to do something else. Something, you lose. There's always some crisis or other that's going on that has to be grappled with, and it can be quite stressful. And there are times, and just getting on stage can be quite stressful. I've been acting for more than 20 years, and I still get like physically scared sometimes, like people talk about stage fright. And I definitely get that. It's tough to put yourself, in front of an audience sometimes. And there are times when you think, oh, just get me out of this. Like, why do I do this to myself? Or you start to bargain with God or whatever you believe in. Like, just get me through this one show, and I promise I'll never do it again. Like, just get me out of this one, and I will never do it again. But in the big picture, when you sit back and reflect on it, there are those moments, but they are just moments. That is not how you feel about your passion and your art. But just because you're following your passion and you love art and you love the work and you believe in it, doesn't mean that there aren't moments when it's really difficult and challenging and you wish you weren't there. You'd like to be someplace else, just relaxing. I mean, I think everybody, even if they're fortunate enough to be doing something they really love, they have moments, and hopefully they're rare, but there are those moments of crisis when you question, like, why did I do this? Why did I expose myself to this? Why do I inflict this on myself? If you feel like that's your everyday, you should be doing a different job. If your job feels like something that's happening to you, that you wish would stop happening to you, that means you should do something else. But there are a couple of times a year when no matter what you do, you are going to feel like that. So those are probably some of the most difficult moments, but they're rare and they're far outweighed by the good moments. But that's real. That's a real thing.
What are some key indicators that I need to look for to realize that this is for me, being an artistic director?
What are some key indicators that might suggest to you that being an artistic director is the job that you should pursue? Do you feel like you have a story to tell? And is it important to you to communicate that story to others? Ultimately, it's the experience of your audience that's important. It's the emotional experience of your audience that matters. Your job is to tell the story to them. So the question is, do you derive satisfaction from telling the story to the people? Your emotional experience is secondary to their emotional experience. When you're creating art, it's not for you. You might feel really good about it, and that's great, but it's a side effect. Ultimately, it's about reaching another person. If it's important to you, if you feel like theater is the way that you can speak to people best, the way to show them your best self or to send them the best message, the best story that you can, that's a sign that you should do it. If that feels important and relevant to you, and if when you're doing it, you feel like this is how I reach people, this is how I express people, that means you should do it. It's not necessarily about, I am such a great actor. Look at me, I feel that I am acting so well. All actors, myself included, there's a degree of vanity and self-obsession and sort of like look at me, look at me, look at me. Every actor has that. I don't care how sort of centered and reasonable they seem. There's a certain amount of like, put the spotlight on me, look at me, do my stuff. But it shouldn't ultimately be about that. It should be about other people. The experience is only valuable if it's shared. I have joy from that sharing, not from, oh, I'm so good. It has to be about reaching somebody else.
Two last questions.
Yeah.
What will be your advice to anyone who wants to pursue this job, from a person who's been there for 20 years?
Sure. My advice from somebody who's been doing this 20 years to those of you who would like to pursue this job is consume art, any form of art. is relevant to theater. Always be working. Be in a play. If you can't be in a play, write. If you can't write, read. Go to a museum. Go to the theater, watch a play. Work on a play, paint something, learn a dance. If you don't have a play to work on, go to the library or the bookstore and get a script and find a play that you really love and learn one speech from that play. That's memorize, like learn to memorize stuff. You're going to have to memorize all kinds of things. Might as well start now. But find the play that you love and just learn, like To Be or Not to Be, or Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, or whatever the speech is that resonates with you. Support the other artists that you know and learn from them. Ask questions. Most artists will be happy to try to answer those questions for you, even if they're not 100% sure of all of the answers. But particularly, I would say at your age, if nothing else, read. Just read all kinds. Read literature. Read Russian novels and comic books. Like read Charles Dickens and read trashy romance novels. Read Faulkner and read Stephen King. Read everybody, because I think everybody that I'm speaking to now probably has access to books, and it's really important to build a base, a foundation of knowledge, so that later when people start talking to you about different styles and making references to all sorts of things, you've got a better chance of knowing what they're talking about, and you'll be equipped with a good solid base of knowledge. That's where I would start, and I think if you're like 12 or 13 now, that's the age to be doing that. It's the age to be reading. Yeah.
Beautiful. And you partially covered this, but what would be the practical exercise that I can do, I don't know, like within the school or within home?
Yeah. Okay, practical stuff that you can do. Your school probably has plays. There's probably a play going on at your school, or at least some group or department or teacher that's producing some sort of performance. So if you're interested in being an artistic director, you should be involved with that group. If you don't have that group available, there are at least plays that you can read. So if nothing else, I would start with like reading some plays. Get somebody to go to a museum, or get somebody to take you to a museum, get somebody to take you to a play. There are student rush tickets, like go to the TKTS booth and stand in line for 2 hours and, get your $18 tickets or your $7 tickets to see something on Broadway. But something that you can do like right now is read. And if you need like an acting exercise to do, I would say like get a play, pick 10 lines and memorize them. Know those lines, make them your lines. A dance, learn a dance. If you can sew something. Make like something really, like a scarf, whatever your level is. If you can draw, try to draw a stage set. Go to a play. Go to a play and think about what you try to articulate to yourself. These are the things I liked about that play. These are the things I didn't like about that play. I liked this line. This line made me feel something. This actress's performance made me feel something. This didn't work. I felt like, and try to think about why and why not. Why was it good? Why wasn't it good? Don't just think I didn't like it or I did like it. Try to answer the question more specifically. Why did I not, or why did I like it? I hope that's helpful. It's practical things you can do.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
A lot of wisdom, a lot of amazing.
It's interesting because it's stuff that is good for me to think about that I don't necessarily articulate all those things to myself.